Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the studio this evening. Laser, good evening. You're on time. Did I make you wonder if you just missed it? I kind of was trying. Perhaps not very successfully, but I kind of was just trying to fool you a little bit. Good evening. Right, time to get on with more of this cat. What I was going to work on was just slimming him down a little bit, which is why I got the gouge out, so that I could get in around here without jabbing my own thumb, which I nearly did. The idea of the gouge really is just to get some nice rounded ends, which I can't do with a chisel, sorry, with a knife, just because of the angles involved in doing it. Irish Lurker, good evening, welcome. Well, it was just a little bit of fun to try here, Laser. Nice to see you again. An Irish Lurker, you too. Fluffy Twiglet, also good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. So, starting by slimming down the cat. Well, only a little bit. I didn't go all the way. I could have done the usual sort of, thank you for everybody for watching, and hope to see you all again. And but I didn't want to confuse too many people. Other people might actually have thought they'd missed the stream and gone away. Don't want them to do that. I'd like them to stick around. Just a mild troll on Laser there, because he joined chat just before I went live, and with a message that he was in time for once. I think it was something like that, wasn't it, Laser? So I thought I'd have a little bit of a joke and half make out that he just missed it. Yeah. Oh, that's right. I was working on this side because I've got it half slimmed down. I don't want to try and get rid of you easily or not, Laser. Actually, there is an easier way of getting rid of you if I really wanted to. Yeah, slash bam. Works quite well. I do sort of, well, I of course use the Better Twitch TV version of the same thing, but it does get practiced quite a bit. Switch knives again. I apologise if my memories are saved, but I apologise if I implied anything else. I'm sorry. See, to me, you're just all very friendly people. Okay, this. Right. Knife control is what I've just after then. As I was doing this, the knife was just basically skipping, and I didn't want that to happen, so basically the way to improve the knife control when that sort of thing happens is to slow down. Because effectively I was just trying to get rid of a ridge that I managed to create just here, and in doing that's what was causing the knife to skip. No, it wouldn't. But for those people that deserve it, and you don't, so you're all right. Of course, should you start being naughty. Okay, to help a little bit with the feeling that this is really tall, what I'm going to do is round the underneath off a little bit here around his tummy. Okay. I'm surprised you missed chat. I'd have thought the video would be the first thing to go. But there again, I guess chat is a bit of an odd beast. If I watch Twitch on my iPad, I can't. It doesn't connect to chat at all. Sorry, if I watch it using the Twitch app, it doesn't connect to chat at all. If I go to Opera, the browser, it works with no problem. Just one of those weird Twitch things. Now then, when you're starting to do as I'm doing here, which is trying to carve a curve from both ends, you quite often end up with like these marks, and they actually get quite difficult to remove unless you take great care, because you end up creating another one. If you cut too deep, you create another one in the other direction, you can end up chasing it. So that's just one area to be a little bit careful of. But of course, you with the grain of the wood, you actually have to change directions, otherwise you split the wood or do something other equally disastrous. So you know, it's something that you have to do, is come from both ends. And again, you see I'm doing it here. It's got to be really careful. I was cutting and then undercutting, and I would have been chasing it a little bit. So slow down. Come back to a little bit. Let's lower the back a bit. Oh, okay. I'm getting old, you see. I'm easily confused. Well, I hope your video managed to survive for the whole stream, and anybody else's that you want to watch as well. Dear, sorry, the thought just crossed my mind then is, a phrase that was used the other night for some reason, which was sort of in my day, when I was a lad. Because, well, I don't know if you're watching the high def. Yeah, you must be watching the high definition stream. I don't have any transcodes. So you're watching a high definition stream of 1280 by 720 pixels at 30 frames per second or thereabouts. And I'm thinking, I was just thinking then that the first time I went on the internet, as it was, sort of on the internet, was dial-up, and that was on a 300 baud modem. 300 bits per second, effectively, in bidirectional, up and down. And that's when you, if you were looking at, I don't know, a photograph on news groups, I don't know, a remote control truck or something like that, you'd look at the size of it first, and it'd be, I don't know, 80 and 90k, and you'd go, that's kilobytes, and you go, can I afford to wait 15 minutes for this to come down, or shall I not bother? And these days you it's a gigabyte, and it's a gigabyte, so what? Away you go. I always carve safely, pockets and expert. That's part of learning the craft and learning how to do it properly. Yep, and if you used an interlace, then you get the you'd either get alternate lines or you get blocks of really rough shape and colour, which would then get finer detail and finer detail and finer detail with each pass. So sometimes it got frustrating like that as well. For about a minute, depending. So when you were at 300 bits per second, it was often more than a minute. Especially because even then, people uploading photographs didn't always think about. Bucket's an expert. Thank you very much. Didn't always think about the fact that somebody else had to download them. Especially, I guess, since quite a few years back then, were probably joined via things like university networks, where they had, maybe a megabit to play with. And then came along 1275. 1200 bits down, 75 bits up. And now people, of course, are wanting sort of gigabit per second links for the internet. You say, all you people with the fast internet links, you don't know you were born. Orbix, good evening. Good evening. Indeed. Well, in some ways, Pocket's an expert in some ways. To be honest, yeah, it was kind of a different kind of fun. My the very first time I went online with actually a modem I constructed myself. I had to type in machine code, a bootloader, in order to be able to do an FTP transfer from the internet of a terminal emulator. So I was bootstrapping the terminal emulator in order to be able to then get onto the internet to do other things, like join the bulletin boards and things like that. So it's a different kind of fun. I mean, these days there's a heck of a lot of information on there, and the videos and stuff like this. Watching somebody carve a pussycat just would not have been possible in those days. So whilst it was fun, it was different. 56k was mind-numbing. 56k. High-speed modems, Orbix. High-speed modems they were. I was just saying, when I started 300 bits per second, not 56k. Blimey, that was really high speed. Kim One Hot Mama, I am fine, thank you very much, and I trust you are as well. Okay, that now wants to come back to about, okay, yeah. So now sort of carving the back shape. The back starts to dip from around just behind the knees, effectively, which are here. Let me twist that light a little bit. It's glaring off of this a bit too much. If I can do this. Actually, if I raise it up, that will help a little bit. There's less glare on it then. Yeah, so the backs, as they're laid like this, tend to dip down and then come up again to the shoulder blades. So I'm just sort of positioning that dip. But yeah, 56k. Of course, you never got 56k out of a 56k modem. I think the most I ever saw was about 40k. But still, compared with a 300 bits per second modem, that was really high speed. Just debating then whether to switch knives. Yeah, it'll be a bit safer. In fact, I think the first thing I ever went online for wasn't actually to get to the internet, because back then it wasn't fantastically interesting. There was about only one thing that was interesting on it, and in actual fact it was I've forgotten which university it was at. It was actually easier to get on using something in the UK called the X25 network, and it used to be a multi-user dungeon. Effectively, if you've ever heard of Zork or Mud, that's not the pop group, that's a game, Mud multi-user dungeon, which is kind of the forefather of adventure games. In fact, I suppose technically it's a forefather of all online games, or computer games, and it was sort of, I think from about midnight in the UK they used to open it up to anybody who wanted to be able to log in to do so, provided they could get on the network, which of course they effectively considered to be other universities and therefore students. But if you had knew the right ways and accesses, you could actually get on from your own home. So playing multi-user dungeon, that was an amazing game. Creams, hello, good evening, welcome to the studio. And how are you today? Okay, well, still a bit tall for my liking, but not a lot I can do about the tall. I was thinking then, what test link are you talking about? Moobot pops it up every 15 minutes, Creams. So it's I've kind of done it on stream, on purpose, of course. But yeah, description. I suppose I could do on the description. I'm not too bad. I'm also a little bit tired, not the same as you are, but I've been busy clearing things out of like a garage and odd rooms for the rest of today. Pathfinder. No, it's not one I'm familiar with. Laser. Would you like to explain further? It might be, but quite often a lot of games got the same game. Back then the same game got called quite a few different things. Because at one point there was kind of I won't say there was a competition, but there was suddenly an explosion almost of mud-like games available on many of the university mainframes overnight. I guess some of the sysops must get bored overnight, so. Or must have got bored, should I say. Must have run all the batch jobs and then would load it up. I'm not quite old enough to have gone through a lot of the computing history, but I've been through a fair bit, and it's I still get thoroughly amazed by how computing has just got so much, in some ways so much more powerful, in other ways got less powerful. Because I mean back then in those days, you're running things like DEC PDP-11s and even and a big powerful computer, whereas mainframe computer was something like a DEC 11750, which would basically fill a reasonably sized room. And yet you could easily run 100, 200 terminals off the same thing, 200 users all at the same time on the same computer. And yet today's modern PC is significantly more powerful in some ways, yet it couldn't handle 100 users. And you know, it's just amazing how computing has developed in different ways. A lot like Dungeons and Dragons, but with slightly different. Oh, okay, sorry, I'm getting a bit lost in what I'm doing. That's one game I've never actually played is D&D. Never actually played it. I mean, well, not even truly as an online game either, or as a computer game. No, well, that's probably true, Creams. Yeah. Razius, welcome. Good evening. Yeah, probably true as well, but yeah, I mean back then, of course, with things like IBM, they had sort of restrictive practices on the mainframe. So if you were a tape loader, you couldn't do certain things. You know, you had to have to be sort of, I've forgotten what it was, but you know you had to sort of I won't say be trained, but you know you had to there had to be separate people doing separate jobs like loading tapes or loading discs, and you know the sysops weren't allowed to load tapes and things like that, so it was an interesting time. What really what really fascinated me was with digital equipment, the deck machines, is their ability to cluster. So that's have more than one machine operating together in such a way that they look and operate like a single machine. Back then, that was something that was revolutionary, and it still is, because even today Linux machines, if they're clustered, they're separate machines just sharing workload. If you have a deck cluster, they operate like a single machine, and you don't know where your workload is being processed, and you don't care, and from minute to minute it can be shifted around. It's an absolutely amazing operating system for that. And the really funny thing is, what used to run on a room-sized computer, you can now run on a Raspberry Pi. So you can actually have I forgot what the operating system was called for the deck mainframes, but you can actually run it on Raspberry Pis, and so you can have your own mainframe computer cluster if you really want to, as long as you've got at least 2 Raspberry Pis. I used to work in IT support, and the old joke about have you turned it on definitely applies. That's not a made up thing. A lot of people think it is. A number of times I have been to people that didn't turn the monitor on, or didn't turn the CPU, you know, the main box on, and you know, it wouldn't start. You go out there, throw the switch, and up it comes. Oh, you're learning valuable team operating skills, layers are. How to operate in a team and produce productive work. I was about to say, Creams. So you're still at university. Most people these days don't know what MS Word is capable of. I've played about with it. Well, I've played about with it since MS Word was whatever came before it. I can't remember now, but it was a DOS-based application, and I don't play about with it that much these days. But I'm not sure. I'm not aware of what half of it's capable of. And I used to program with the thing. Stark Arc, good evening, or Stark Arc. No, I'm not carrying a CPU. It's probably got more power than a CPU, but it's a sleeping pussycat. But I tell you what, Razia. I mean, being able to Google effectively or use a search engine effectively, is a real skill that at work I don't find many people are able to employ. They they will go things like, I can't find anything about this on Google, and I'll put the search terms in, and the first thing that pops up is exactly what I'm looking for. And it's kind of, how did you do that? I just put in the search terms. Clouds Guy, good evening, welcome. Yeah, you need something I think you do, you're right, Creams, you need something to build on. If you've got, you got to start obviously with somewhere. Once you understand, you can then use it to develop that understanding, and improve or whatever it is. But if you if you Google something and you don't know what they're talking about, it still doesn't help you. Oh, Cisco. Yeah. Yeah, I used to sell the Cisco stuff. Did quite a few. Well, I was actually used to support it as well. Some of the earlier routers. Anything. I stopped with the 2700 series, but some of the big switches as well. Interesting stuff. And really nice and flexible systems. But these days I probably wouldn't know one end of a router from the other. What I'm making is there. What am I making? I'm making a sleeping pussycat. So if I take it out of the glare of the light, there you have a sleeping pussycat. That's what I'm working on. At one point I started working on the CNA, but or is it CCNA? Or maybe it's changed in the time, I can't remember now. And CCNP, I think it was, Network Professional. But then I changed jobs, so I never carried on. IPv6, I kind of don't quite understand. I mean, I know what it is and what have you. I mean, I as a development of IPv4, but I kind of don't understand the addressing concept of it just yet. I've not had any need to, so it hasn't really bothered me. I guess within a few years I'm going to need to understand it just to be able to do things. Yeah, start back. It is in a way. There was only I don't know what there is now. Back when I was doing stuff, there was only three. Um, Three levels, I think. I'm trying to think now. See if the NP Network Professional was one of the levels, or whether it was a separate track. Can't quite remember. You don't understand me. Yeah, I suppose it would. It would, creams. Well, you're on about googling Google there. It's kind of one of the interesting things is how many is sort of how many people don't actually know where the name comes from. Hmm. The bit that kind of used to annoy me about the Cisco stuff is things like the books. You'd be paying about £60 or £80 for one of the books. I mean, granted, they were sort of 2.5 inches thick, but there were pricey manuals, pricey things. And if work hadn't have been paying for it, it would have been, if I'd have been trying to do it on my own, it would have been horrendously expensive. A Googleplex, indeed, Laser. One with 100 zeros after it. And if I'm not sure I do remember correctly, but I think it had something to do. Well, obviously it was the largest number. I'll say the largest number known. Which is, I mean, there are bigger numbers, but it's the largest number that was named. Was the Googleplex, and if I remember rightly, they decided to pick that because in theory it was something to do with that was going to be the maximum size of all known knowledge or something. I can't quite remember, but there was something like that about it. Yep, 10 to the power 100. That was in the UK. There's television, or was a television program called "Who Wants to Be a Millionaire." Effectively, they give you the question and the answers, and that was a question for £1 million at one point on one program. Was what is a Googleplex? Oh, was it what Googleplex or what is a? They might have asked it the other way around. What is 1 followed by 100 zeros? And as usual with programs like that, I'm going, it's as most people did at home. The answer is this. It's dead simple. Why don't you know? I think they declined to answer and therefore took home about £500,000. But yeah. 1.51 times 10 to the 92 years. That's quite a lot. Of course, you can write more than, well, I suppose on average, I don't know. See, you can write more than 2 digits a second, but now this is where chat and the delay messes with me, because I know where what layers are. Or no way they didn't know the answer to a Googleplex. Yeah, I know. How can you not know the answer to that? Right, let's see if I can just shape this leg a little bit more. And I'm going to run into a problem where, as usual, without, I'll do it using the angle of the knife will make it difficult, so I'll use the gouge, which of course still won't be that easy, but what a Googleplex. I have suspect that that's probably something that's being recorded on purpose. I mean, there are it's you know there's quite a few canned responses I think built into those Siri or Cortana or whatever it is on the other one. Yahoo search, Alta Vista, Jeeves. Jeeves used to be more natural language than any of the others, but that's kind of changed now. What Jeeves? It used to be called Jeeves, and it's called Ask now. There's you see, you've got to learn teamwork. Learn how to control your leaders. Learn how to get them to do what you want them to do. It's a valuable skill to learn for the future, is that? When you've got a job and you can get your boss to do what you want him to do or her to do, just by, I won't say manipulating because that's not true, but just by the way in which you approach something, then you've learnt a great skill which will be immensely useful to you. What you're getting people to do things that that you want them to do, yeah. I think that's a skill that comes with marriage, you know, Orbix, or any long-term relationship. I'm just hollowing this out a little bit here. I don't necessarily feel like I need to go 100% accurate, so mainly because I'm not sure I can. So I'm sort of presupposing that I can't, and therefore if I don't, it's not going to cause me a problem. and if I do manage to get a little bit realistic, I can be pleasantly surprised. How much for which bracelets? One I'm wearing, do you mean? Or some of the others? Depends what the testing for layers are, but don't necessarily discount that. Some fonts, even with a pixel difference in size, will look odd compared to when they're put alongside something else. Presentation of information can be as important as the information itself, and what you get sometimes if you have information that looks untidy, people consider the information itself is untidy. Now, untidy is I'm just using a broad word there, but you know, when it if you like, when it looks like somebody hasn't taken care to, you know, be consistent, then they think that the data or whatever also isn't consistent. It might be, you know, that's not, you know, I'm not questioning that at all, but it is something that that quite often happens. You know, even something as you might think sort of spelling mistakes aren't that important, but people fixate on small things, and it throws their perception of everything else off as well. On the site, all the prices are there. Creams, there is 10% off the prices at the moment with the code that Moobot keeps popping up. You should be able to, if you're not, you should be able to get Etsy to show you it in your own currency. Well, yes, okay. Badly made templates or design templates can be a pain in the neck, I agree. That's a good job I was wearing the Kevlar glove there, because otherwise I'd have just cut myself. I just this popped out and I caught myself with the chisel. If I hadn't have had the glove on, I would probably have just if you like, pricked myself. I'd have got a small amount of blood. Not, it wouldn't have been a horrendous cut or anything like that, but just like I'd jabbed myself with a pin. I'm not putting any force into this at all. Oh, I see. I see what you mean, Creams. Unfortunately, that's the way they work out for some of them. Kim One Hot Mama, thank you very much for the follow. I will be uploading tonight a new one based on the Simply Gold, but it will actually be the Simply collection. I'm already building a collection, you see, but with silver clasp rather than the gold clasp, and that one will be at a lower price than any of them, but that's, you know, they are a simple bracelet. Unfortunately, creams, and if you've ever seen chainmail being done, it takes a relatively long time to do. So that's kind of where the prices come from. You want a ham sandwich but got no bread? I want a ham sandwich but I've got no ham. Unfortunately, we're not in the same place, otherwise we could share. But thank you anyway, Cream. Sorry I can't make one of them yours. Let's make a deal on the sandwich, yeah. No, unfortunately, I don't think the ham would survive the or the bread would survive the postage. Okay, so if I now switch to a different chisel, I can get a little bit deeper around the face. I think that's the U. Yeah, it is. Yep. Well, in that case, that's one of the good things about those particular ones, creams, and you'll see it elsewhere. They're made out of aluminium, and then they're anodized. So there's no nickel in the rings at all, and in my case I'm using sterling silver as the clasp, or I use rolled gold, which I think is on a copper base. So there should be no nickel in any of them. Chainmail that's made out of stainless steel, then I believe that can contain nickel depending on what steel it is. So in theory you should be safe. So if you look out with that sort of jewellery for aluminium, then you should be okay. Obviously the clasps as well depends on, because they're not usually made out of aluminium. They're usually some other metal. Either I don't use silver or gold plated because my wife, Mrs. Aragonat, the skin oils on her, like on her wrist, will eat through silver plate in about an hour. So you get on my wife that, if you like, an hour before she wore it was bright silver, and as you can see now it's actually a coppery colour, which is the underlying metal. It was silver plated on top of. So I use sterling silver for that reason. She doesn't eat sterling silver. Actually, it's quite a nice colour ultimately, but it wasn't what it was intended to be. And the same with the gold. If you get gold plate, my wife it just vanishes. So actually, what I use is it's called either filled gold or rolled gold, but I can't remember what the base metal is. But a relatively thick layer of gold is bonded to the underlying metal. Effectively, they do it, I think, by a rolling processor, so they feed both metals through a big roller which sort of crushes it and basically forces the two together. And it's a relatively thick layer. It's about 100 or more times thicker than a gold plate or silver plate. Have I ever seen a UFO? Yes, I've seen lots of them. Pockets and Expert. See them quite frequently. But I suspect I'm not answering the question that you thought you were asking. Because a UFO is an unidentified flying object. If I see something in the sky that I don't know what it is, it's unidentified. I suspect you may be asking the question in respect to spacecraft and or aliens from other places, that sort of thing. If you mean that, no, I've never seen anything that I would consider to be that. I don't disbelieve that they could be so, but I have personally not seen any evidence to convince me that they are here. I think there has to be some out in space. I can't see humans being the only intelligent species anywhere. That's just a little bit too much to believe. You can't wear plated. Yeah. Well, some of them. Don't, I forgot what. I mean, some of them you plated. They'll either use copper as the base metal. Some, as you say, will use things like tin and steel. And if they have, they'll generally copper plate it first, and then, or possibly nickel, then copper, then gold or silver. But I don't actually know what the alloy is, because sterling silver is an alloy. It's 925 parts per thousand, or 92.5% silver, and there's 7.5% of something else, which I don't actually know what it is. No interdimensional crafts that I'm aware of. I mean, that's the key thing as well. There is a fictional book that I've read, a series actually. I'm trying to think what it's called now. It's called the Giant series, but I'm trying to think who the author was. And in one of the, I mean, it's set in the future, but in one of those, the aliens, in quotes, sent to Earth a spacecraft that looks like a normal passenger jet, because they are trying to hide it from certain people on Earth. So you know, if you'd seen one of those, how would you know? Okay, thanks very much for the tips, Creams. I will put that down. I mean, it is. I guess it is described as aluminium or whatever, but it's always worth sort of saying it. You know, it's completely nickel free. You weigh sterling or titanium. Interesting, you say titanium, because chainmail can be applied to titanium as well. What I've got here, especially if I focus in a little bit better on it, let me just do that a second and see if I can get this focus to there you go. Sit still, camera. You've got autofocus on. Stop that. This is these are titanium rings. Anodized titanium. They're actually purple and green, but even to me it looks like purple and blue. But titanium, so I can actually. It's a bit harder to work with because the titanium's harder than the aluminium, so twisting them is a bit harder work. But I can actually make titanium bracelets. So I was. This is just an experiment. I've only got this size ring and these particular colours, because I was going to just make one up just to see what it was like. Because I like experimenting with the different. There's I can get rhodium as well. I think it is, and titanium. as well as aluminium. I'm not particularly interested in the steel myself. I have no particular reason for doing that sort of stuff. But so there you go. And it may well be that you've completely missed all that because I've just seen the BRB. Right. Now the idea of the potential for other races outside the solar system to be visiting is an interesting one. I'm not sure myself. I'm not seeing any evidence convincing enough. Well, not seen any personally, and I'm not seeing any evidence presented convincing enough to convince me that they are actually visiting. Okay, so now then, what's the shape of the face going to be like? Pencil. I got the ears there, so okay, I can adjust that ear a little bit. If I bring that down like that, so I'm just sketching. That's kind of okay as this side, but I think I need to remove a little bit of more material from around the muzzle. I'm doing this totally from imagination and or memory, so I don't actually know whether what I'm doing is right. DMJT72, hello, welcome, good evening. Nice to see you in the studio again. And I see 3D Bloke there as well, good evening. I was watching you last night with your spin tyres. I tell you what, your microphone sounds a heck of a lot different when you're closer to it like that. As to when you're painting. That's assuming you're using the same microphone. That's a bit too wide for what I'm trying to do here. For the minute, when I first heard it, I thought, have I got the wrong stream? It was a while before about 20 seconds or so before I sort of tuned into your voice and thought, yeah, that is free. Okay, so I want a little bit of space just under the muzzle there, so I'm going to do is just carve this paw rounded. Unfortunately, I saw the last bit when you were rolling. I didn't see the start of it. I was busy looking at something else at the time, and I heard you the exclamation, shall we say, and looked up to see the hill descent. I don't know. It's quite a spectacular result. Now I can only do what I'm doing here with the blade actually making contact with my thumb, because I'm putting no power at all into this. Anything more than I'm doing now, this blade is sharp enough to cut without any effort at all. Yeah, it is. It's very thin at a distance. It's the best way I can describe it. Oh, in that case, I'll try and remember to take a look if you've highlighted it. In actual fact, I probably don't want to round it off quite that much. I probably want to cut it down further. Yeah, the lavalier mics, yeah. I thought about those. Seriously thought about getting one. When I got mine, the desk mic I've got now. The thing that put me off them, because they are, to be honest, probably the best for the job, is the fact that, well, unless you get one that's happy on rechargeable batteries, they tend to last. They tend to go through batteries about every 3 or 4 hours, and not all of them seem happy to use rechargeables, which I guess is just down to the voltage that they work at. But yeah, I think for something like airbrushing, when you're effectively moving around a great deal, it's probably a better idea. Unfortunately, they're just a little bit pricey. And you having said which, of course, it wouldn't surprise me if you've already got the receiver anyway, free. Yeah. Yeah, not only, yeah, as you say, the rechargeable ones are expensive, but the ones where you can use a rechargeable, take it out and recharge type cell, the AAA cells, they also seem to be quite pricey as well. I mean that sort of would be the being a reasonable sort of. I wouldn't mind sort of a couple of hours life as long as I could take the battery out and recharge it. But so I think they looked. Yeah, they look good. They are good, but I couldn't justify it. What I'm trying to do here is just thin the paw down a little bit. Just under here, under his chin, basically. I think I just want a little bit more separation between his sort of chin and his paw. Yeah, it is, isn't it? I don't know about professional quality headset mics like that free. I know gaming ones you can get quite a few. I don't know what the quality is like of them though, to be honest. But and it's not something I looked at headset wise, because that was the idea of the microphone, was to get rid of the headset. Duel Dragon, thank you very much. That's kind of you for following. I'm still not really getting under that nose like I want, but let's see if I can just bring this cheek in a little bit. So, one of these days I'm going to learn to carve something where I've got room to actually carve it. When I was doing the dragon, the tail loops one way. If I'd have looped the tail the other way, I'd have made my life significantly easier, because I'd have had more room to get a carving knife, chisel in. And it's kind of like this. If I'd chosen a slightly different pose, like for example with his head forward, I'd have had a heck of a lot more room to get the chisels in and the knives in. You'd think I'd learn, but nah. Oh, you can do some spinning. You ought to. That's something that you ought to perhaps consider streaming TMJT. Watching, it's an watching somebody spin is an interesting art to watch. I know some people wouldn't perhaps be interested, but the people that are interested in carving. I can't understand why, but Duel Dragon, you love carving. Yes, I'm glad to hear it. So do I. Do you do any carving yourself? I'm a relative beginner at it. And hence why I make a lot of mistakes, but of course, let me just refocus this. No, I don't know quite why the autofocus keeps turning itself on, but there we go. So I am just trying to work in this area here, just to sort of try and get a bit more face shape. Yeah, you do. Oh, you started when you were 8 years old. Okay. So we have an expert carver in the room, and it isn't me. Do you stream doing any of it, Duel Dragon? Then I certainly would be interested in watching other people. Obviously, depends on time, but would be interested in watching other people carve, and potentially learn some things. That's a pity. Well, hopefully I don't make you cringe too much from some of the stuff that I'm doing. I could quite understand if you if you are. And I've got this face shape wrong, but at this point there's not a lot I can do about it. But it's It's sort of still cat-like. Right. Not quite sure I'm happy with the neck area on the back here either, but I'm kind of just hopping around a little bit. Just sort of playing with the shape. The face, not well, I've not got a face shape that I particularly like a great deal, but so I'll probably continue to just sort of play a little bit with it. And I may end up ruining it altogether, but if I do, I'll have learnt something. Oh, hey, that sounds nice. 8-bit princess, blimey, with 8-bit. We were talking about modems earlier on and mainframes. 8-bit sounds a nice tie-in. You carved a cute octopus out of wood. That would have been an interesting challenge, especially what, full 3D or relief style. It would have been easier in a relief carve than trying to fully carve legs. But that would be octopus. 8 legs, yes. 8 legs on an octopus. I'm having enough trouble with 4 legs, never mind 8. Oh, okay. Well, I guess this is kind of saying this is 3D, but not full 3D technically because it's got a flat bottom. I know I normally do relief carving, where it wouldn't be anything as deep as this, but I kind of want it to branch out a little bit, if you'll excuse the sort of semi-pun with reference to wood, and yeah, and do a little bit more sort of figure work, or at least animal figure work. And so this is kind of a practice to sort of develop that 3D capability or ability, the skills necessary. But what's not necessarily helping me is I'm doing this totally sort of from memory, without any sort of reference picture, and the model for it isn't around at the moment. Now it looks like an elephant nose. See if I can shape this a little bit better. I've found even with well, with relief carving, that sometimes if I can just shape something that is not happy with, I'm not happy with, if I can just sort of shape it a little bit sometimes, rather than just block carve it, that I can see the thing a lot better. So I quite often end up doing detailed carving too early. And then quite often carving that detail away before putting it back, but I find it sort of helps me understand my image sometimes. I'm wondering if this is the same with this nose. It's not, the nose is wrong. Eight legs is so hard. Why isn't it kind of one repeated 8 times, so you get 8 times the amount of practice? It depends on how hard you hit the ground free. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I mean, carving is, in theory, carving is carving. I mean, this was relief carved, but it's a bit deeper than I'd normally do. I mean, this was what, 1.5 inches wood when I started, and it's about 1/2 inch as the back on this. So there's probably about 3/4 of an inch relief, maybe an inch actually, at the real strong point here, high point here. But we have, I know I've taken at least 1/2 inch off that from the original wood, just because I kept making mistakes and I kept having to lower the whole thing down. But food. No, you can't argue with food free. Oh, just before you go, are you going to stream tonight? Oh, are you giving it a pass? Oh, okay. If it was going to follow this, I'd have thrown it over on a host 3D. But if it's for those of you that's in stream that might not have realised, 3D bloke there. Actually, he's an artist. He's I just thought of a different type of artist, which tickled me a little bit. I'm guessing you might know the one type that I'm thinking of, but which I know you don't partake of. He's an airbrush artist, and he works with the hairy thing. On the, the stick with the fuzzy end, and does some quite amazing artwork. At the moment, though, he's enjoying spin tyres too much to do much art. But even so, he's a fun guy to either watch doing art or to watch playing spin tyres. So if he does go live tonight, I recommend you check out the stream. You're not happy tonight, are you, Laser? You've got to learn to chill out. You don't get stressed over it. As if it's bothering you, learn the double. Yeah, I kind of remembered that you got them in the freezer. You see, that's why you didn't refer to that type of artist. Doll Dragon. Has that got anything to do with why you got into carving there? Because it does. Well, when I've talked to other people before that have done artistic like things, which is things like carving or whatever, a lot of them have got other family members that have sort of, I won't necessarily say inspired, but that they're perhaps the reason why they started doing something. I'm not altogether sure whether it applies to me or not. My mother's father, so my maternal grandfather, used to make models, and he certainly was the one that introduced me to aero modelling, making balsa wood models when I was younger. And he used to make models out of either matchsticks or lollipop sticks in the UK, so popsicle sticks, I guess, for the Americans. So he used to make buildings out of those. Quite. This looks more like a fox now. Quite sort of detailed buildings. So it's possible I got certainly the model making interest from him. I don't know about the artist stuff though. Okay, well, I say play the double game. So anticipate them. So when the subject comes up, you can go, you mean like this or whatever. Presuppose them, and actually if you presuppose them you probably don't need to go, you mean like this, because you'll have fixed it anyway. But take it as a different sort of challenge. So you're not seeing a lot of flashing blades at the moment, or wood chips flying all over the place. I am working quite slowly and with very small amounts of wood coming off here. I'm still not getting the face shape. I'm sort of getting the face shape I'm looking for. What it is, it's too wide. It's much too wide, but I'm kind of stuck with that now because I can't move the ears, and they would need to be sort of closer in. I'm gonna maybe see if I can sort of cheat a little bit and round the face off a bit here. So it's kind of slightly stylized now as a cat rather than an accurate rendition. if you can work out a strategy for dealing with it now, or you know, helping you overcome your frustration layers are now, it will almost certainly help you a lot in your long-term career, because there will always be people like that. And if you don't believe me, go have a look at I've forgotten the cartoon now. Oh, what's the cartoon? The Office cartoon. Oh dear. I'll think about it in a minute. Because I was going to say the cartoon has got Dilbert. That's the one I was thinking of. You'll see, you know, when you've worked in offices for a long time and you read Dilbert, you realise you've seen the situations that many times in real life. It's such an amazing thing. Actually, just rounding that corner off made a big difference to the way I perceive this at the moment. So although it's still wide, it doesn't actually look as bad, because I started to round it around now, sort of around the top of the face. Oh dear, I can't win with lighting here. I either don't have enough, or I get so much glare off it that I can't see, or it's reflecting so much light back at the camera. Yeah, I've got the light turned. Well, I suppose I could put auto light, auto gain is turned off as well. That's probably why it's can't win with these cameras. So okay, so now that I've done that, let's do something just a little bit similar at this side. Is that? I don't quite know what I'm doing. No, let's put it another way. I have no idea what I'm doing. I think I know what shape I'm after, but so what kind of gone here? If this is the edge of the muzzle, the nose basically, then the mouth is directly below it. So this kind of shouldn't be any material just here, other than sort of just neck fur, which is around it, and there will be neck fur there. So I kind of want to just carve that back a little bit, and that's perhaps one of the shape changes I need to make. So that's what I'm just trying to do now. See if I can do this with a chisel and keep my fingers out of the way. So I tend to go quiet sometimes when I'm concentrating, and it's one of those things where perhaps what I ought to do is find some background music. I haven't done that yet though. I was going to come back up there. The eye socket is kind of around the nose. Right. I was about to say this would probably be so much easier with an actual reference model, but probably not, because he'd be wanting to sit on the desk or on my knee, either of which would not be conducive to carving too much. The last time he was on stream, he objected to me moving his tail out of my pile of sawdust, with the result that you see on the back of my hand. Just in case you were wondering, it's not a carving accident. Well, I suppose it is a carving accident, but nothing to do with the knives and chisels. Yeah, so those of you that want to do sort of live model work like carving or painting, yeah, watch your models, they've got sharp claws. Sort of getting something there, I think. Just for the minute there, I was looking at the wood at this end, which has gone sort of feather because of the number of cuts that's in it, and it just kind of looked like he'd sort of been back combing his fur on his paw. I am worrying about, well, not worrying, but fiddling about with the detail of the nose area, and I've still got the paws, to the front paws and arms to carve out, and some more work to do on the back, but so I've got a little bit fixated on this bit, which probably means I should stop being fixated and move on to something else. But it's kind of, I sometimes get, if I'm going to ruin it, let me ruin it at the start, then I can start again a lot easier than waiting until I've got almost all the way done, then ruin it. So I kind of, when it comes to sort of awkward detail stuff that I'm not really sure I know how to do, it's always a coin toss as to whether I do it at the start and mess it up early, or I leave it till the end where I might not mess it up and I've had plenty of time to sort of work around it. And I'm never sure which is the best strategy. 84 Guy, good evening, welcome. Boomaro, how many cats have I made? None. This is the first one. I've done a couple in pyrography, I've done a couple in, or 3 in punchcraft, I've done 2 in airbrushing, at least 2, maybe more. But this is the first one in carving at all. Anam Cyber, good evening. Welcome to the studio. I'm debating whether it looks more like a bear than it looks like a cat, but that might change. So I know I want to come. I'm going to carve this in a little, because at the moment obviously it's got an almost flat face, which is not the case. And I want to tip the heads down sort of like this. The nose and the forehead tend to be in alignments vertically, and then the eyes, just like on a human, go in. Obviously the nose is longer than it is on a human, but it's the same sort of concept. So I've got to try and get that shape in. So that we actually get a nose bridge, this sort of area here, and then that the eyes obviously then go between it. The female model has turned up on my other chair. Since she's busy washing, I don't think she's going to be much help for modelling for this. How old am I? Well, in actual fact, that's kind of one of the personal questions that Twitch terms and conditions suggest that you should not ask, Cyber, but as I have mentioned it before, I am over 50. A bit too dog-like is this, it's a bit too wide. I tend to think of, when you're looking face on to a cat, that sort of the tip of the nose and the sides of the mouth, if you like, form like a triangle, like that. And a dog has a wider version of that than a cat. Cats are quite narrow. And at this moment in time, I'm looking at this and thinking that's a little bit too wide, and that again is distracting me a little bit. I'm sorry, but I'm assuming you're talking about microwaving. Because if you're not, that's not very nice. I tend to the Anglified Chinese food. Anglified Chinese food. The sort of Chinese food that they sell in the UK. I tend to like just a couple of different dishes, and that's king prawns and fried rice, or the other one I like, chicken chop suey. And I always tend to end up having the same thing. It's like that with pizzas. I have the same thing in pizzas every time as well. Pepperoni feast with capers and olives. Now about Boomara, how would you know that's what he meant? Or are you both in the same room? I think the is it the statistics that say the curry is rapidly becoming the English national food. Chicken satay with rice, salt and pepper spare ribs, and pancake rolls. That's a decent meal, to say the least. It would be from where we normally get it. I kind of struggle with just the one sort of thing. I keep every time I get food like that, I keep going. I really must try whatever, like chicken satay or stuff like that. And next time when I walk in, I'm gonna try something else. I love king prawns. Every time I do it. I like eating sort of different foods like that, so yeah, I am guessing a lot of the foods are Anglified in a lot of ways, but I do like sort of eating different foods that would be more common in other cultures. There are some, however, that I would perhaps choose not to want to taste, but that, of course, is the English culture overriding that. Which I do, 3D. I do like peanuts, especially salted peanuts. If I'm going to bring the muzzle up to about there, okay. Just working out where things are going to go. Yes, maybe 3D, maybe 3D. Now, of course, the challenge at this bit here, which I can probably address quite easily using one of the gouges, is getting a smooth transition, because it's cat fur or cat, the skin of the cat underneath. You don't get many creases in skin, so things like around the arms here, it's going to be a relatively smooth transition. And whilst at this bottom end the fur is wrapped all the way around, because it's clasped fairly tight against the body, again the sort of fur tends to blend a little bit, so again you don't really have a tight transition. That shoulder's in the wrong place. That's kind of... Switch knives. I could boom arrow, but there isn't a lot of point to shift a lot of wood. You've got to use very coarse sandpaper, and the knife is quicker. And to be honest, sometimes smoothing wood out is a lot better to use a knife than it is to use sandpaper. Sandpaper does tend to actually leave the surface very dull, whereas if you a lot of time when you carve with a knife, the surface gets really shiny. If you rub it with sandpaper, it gets really dull and white looking, and it never really sort of gets that shine back. It just goes a darker colour, and I don't like that. I prefer the shine that comes with carving with a sharp blade, and I also like the tooling marks in the wood. I'm not after, in this particular case, I'm not after a perfectly smooth surface. So I'm not mimicking the cat fur, for example, which effectively, at this scale, would be extremely smooth, to the point where, if you sandpapered it, you would probably be closer to it. I do like the actual carving marks that sort of show it's been hand carved, and I know if they were machine carving it, they could make it look the same, but if something's dead smooth, people are somewhat suspicious to whether it's actually been hand carved or not. They seem to equate smooth with machine cut or moulded, and sort of this sort of textured look, if you like, with it being hand carved. I know a machine can do that just as easily as I can, but do I like cats? Yes, there are 3 around here. There's one in the studio at the other end at the moment, curled up, and the other 2 visit from time to time. I can varnish it. The varnish will make it shiny, but you will still see the unshiny stuff underneath it. That kind of, because a varnish is a clear coat. Oh, I could hear a funny noise. It was me, I think, just moving the chisel blade. It's just a clear coat. You can see through it to some extent. So whilst you get a shiny surface, you can see an unshiny surface underneath it. If you do varnish it, then on top of a shiny surface, then you get more of a shine. But to be honest, I often, with the relief carving that I've done, I have varnished, I think, one. I didn't particularly like it, to be honest, varnished. The natural wood colour and the feel of the wood is slightly different when certainly the colour and the feel are different when you varnish it. And I kind of like the natural wood, and yes, it goes darker. It sort of oxidizes over time, and if you play about with it enough, it gets dirty. But I quite like that wood texture. So I have left all but one of mine unvarnished. I like them just with a natural wood finish. What's my estimate on finishing this one? No idea, to be honest, Orbix. Literally, I don't. I've no measurement stick against it. If I was relief carving it, which I'm not, then 2 or 3 days of a couple of hours, so about 6 hours, 5 or 6 hours. The face is the bit I'm going to spend a lot of time on it here, shaping that more than anything else. Or if I just come across something else that I decide I don't like the shoulder here was too wide. It's about right on this side. It's a bit too wide on this side. The 2 bones are closer on this side than this side, but that doesn't bother me a little bit too much, because the cat kind of, whilst he hasn't, with him curved in that way, it's kind of like leaning over. So these 2 points are closer to each other, but just the shoulder looked a bit too too wide, so if I come across things like that, then it might take a little bit longer. I'm not a particularly fast carver. I'm quite cautious when I'm carving, because I don't know what I'm doing. So yeah, it takes me a lot longer than it might take somebody else who is proficient and has been doing it for years. I'm sure they could probably do something like this in maybe a couple of hours. You know, if you've got the confidence to go in and then just chop off large areas of wood, then you can get through it fairly quickly. Where's the cat going? There's a number of different answers to that. One is asleep, he's not going anywhere. Second is on a shelf behind me when it's finished, or a table behind me when it's finished. Or the third answer would be I don't understand the question. So if I've answered it, fine. If I've misunderstood the question, if you'd like to rephrase it, I shall see what the answer is. Starting to look a bit better to my eyes. What other things have I carved? The stuff I've carved since I've been streaming, there's been 2 or 3 things. Where did it go? So since I started streaming carving, excuse me, I've got something under the chair out. There we go. That was the first thing that I did on carved on stream. A very shallow relief carve, and it's very shallow because it's ash, and I didn't have it clamped down, so it was really hard to work with a chisel. So it's really shallow relief carved, but it's and then the stream decided they'd like to see it painted, and I kind of agreed. So it got a coat of paint, which is something I've never done before. So this was a first, actually painting a carved object. Does that one? And the other thing that was carved, has been carved, is the dragon. Ruth is the name of this dragon. Okay, 3D. Then if you're going to be live in a few minutes, I might throw over to you, because I've just seen the time. So that's these are the only 2 things that I've yep, see you free. These are the only 2 that I've actually carved on stream. I've done some other stuff for myself, but that's elsewhere, and I can't actually show you it. And this is I actually started this about 6 months ago, and I've just picked it up again. It was really just rough carved at that point, and now I'm just seeing if I can finish it. Thank you very much, Boomara. So I think that elbow looks a little bit too pointy. It should actually be straight, because cats shouldn't have bent bones. Still don't like that transition, but we'll look at that again. I'm going to have to study. I'm going to have to take a look at a real cat, I think, just give myself a better idea of how these front paws sort of are when they lay out in this sort of position. And those shoulder blades would be sort of yeah, shoulders aren't right. I kind of know that. I think they should be at the top in more, because you've got the shoulder blade just the same as we do. I don't know if it's the same shape, but they have a shoulder blade, because when they're in this pose it tends to stick up here and sort of like a couple of ridges just above the front paws, the arms, for want of a better description. So they tend to stick up with a sort of a dip in between them, which is kind of what's missing out of there. But they're sort of in further than this is at the moment, so I think I probably need to carve that way a little bit on both of them. They're stuck way out too far, and it's still a bit thick around here. Still got to shape this more in, more of a right angle than that is at the moment. That's too curved. It looks nice, but it's kind of too curved. Castang, good evening. Thank you. Laser, okay, have a good evening. Have a stressful night's rest, and hope you feel better tomorrow. In actual fact, guys, and sorry Castang, you've kind of just joined at the last moment, but it's now coming up to 10:15 here in the UK. I've been doing this for almost 2.25 hours now, and it's about time for me to slope off as well. So let me hold that so the light doesn't get it, so you've got a better idea. It's looking a lot nicer to me than it was before. This front end shape still isn't quite right. Still looks a bit like a grizzly bear or something. So we'll carry on with this tomorrow night. So what I'm going to do is do a couple of things. What I'm going to do is point out the message, which is at the top there. I just recently opened an Etsy shop. I'm selling some of the jewellery that I've done on stream, or not. So I'm selling jewellery, examples of which I've done on stream, which will help pay for some of the craft work that gets done. So if you're at all interested, I recommend that you check that. I would do, wouldn't I? I'm selling stuff, so I'm going to recommend that you check it out. And Moobot's just put a 10% off coupon into the chat if you're interested in anything there. Apart from that, what I want to do is say thank you everybody for watching. If you're watching and not following, I'm also going to encourage you to push the follow button. You don't have to, but if you like what you're watching, why not? Twitch will then let you know when I go live next. If you don't want to follow, that's quite alright. However, you might still want the notification, in which case you can use Twitter at ZaragonArt. A tweet goes out when I go live and not for much else. So you're not going to get tweets every 2 minutes from me or anything like that. Details, at ZaragonArt below the main stream window if you come back later having forgotten what it is. Or they'll be on the end plate in a moment if you want to write it down. On the other hand, if you just want to try and catch the stream tomorrow, I do stream 7 nights a week, but tomorrow, as with most nights, I start from 8 PM UK time. That's 1900 hours GMT, or 2¼ hours ago. So thank you everybody. I hope I'll see you again on a future stream. Bye for now.